20 minutes. That was our window. Enter Iranian airspace, 200 feet above the desert, and disappear. Intelligence called it a milk run, a walk in the park. They assured us the corridor was cold, but it wasn't. What the press showed was the medal on my chest for heroic survival. What they never told is that for 12 terrifying seconds after impact, hanging upside down smelling fuel, I considered turning off the emergency radio. The manual was clear. A pilot on the ground is a liability. Dying in silence was the protocol. The decision I made next broke every rule and turned a downed rescuer into the only eye in the sky for my team. That truth almost cost me everything. So, listen carefully. What you're about to hear is not in the official mission report. If you want to understand what really happens in the shadows, when a man has to choose between the manual and the lives of his team, subscribe and tell me in the comments if you're ready, because this story needs to be told. You know, the body is a curious thing. For 80-some years, it's your home, your only dwelling. And then, one day, without warning, you start to feel the seams coming undone. Not all at once, but thread by thread. It was a Tuesday. There was nothing special about it. The afternoon sun came through the living room window, drawing a golden rectangle on the wooden floor. I remember seeing dust particles dancing in that light, like lazy little angels. I was sitting in my usual armchair, the one with the arms already worn from a lifetime of companionship. The only sound was the pendulum clock on the wall. Tick, tock. So constant, so faithful. I always liked that sound. It told me that time was passing, yes, but that everything was in its proper place. But on that day, there was something else. Another rhythm. A rhythm that came from within. It started as a pressure in my chest. Not a sharp pain, not at first. It was more like a weight, the feeling of a hand that rests on your chest and slowly begins to squeeze. First gently, then with more and more firmness. I tried to breathe deeply, but the air seemed to have become dense, too heavy for my lungs. My daughter was in the kitchen. I could hear the soft sound of dishes. I thought about calling her. I opened my mouth, but the voice didn't come. It was as if the word had gotten lost on the way between thought and tongue. A knot, a silence that wasn't mine. The pressure increased, and the invisible hand now seemed to be pushing me into the depths of the armchair. And that's when the sounds started to change. The ticking of the clock. It grew distant, farther and farther away. The clatter of dishes in the kitchen sounded as if it were coming from underwater, muffled, losing its shape. My own heart. I could feel it beating erratically, a desperate race against an end it already foresaw. The light from the window. Ah, the light. It became immense, white, blinding. It swallowed the colors of the room, the wood of the floor, the fabric of the armchair. My eyes burned, but I couldn't close them. I no longer saw the room. I saw only light. A light that didn't burn, but that enveloped me. The pressure in my chest stopped being pain. It became just a presence, and then a relief, a letting go, as if the hand had finally set me free. And with that release came a lightness I hadn't felt in decades. I felt a pull, not violent, a gentle invitation, upward. The last thought I had in this world, I remember it clearly, was, ah, so this is how it is. The sound of the clock disappeared. The light was everything. And I was no longer in the armchair. I was being lifted out of the tent that was beginning to collapse. And suddenly, the pulling stopped. There was no more up nor down. There was no more movement, just being. The sensation of being lifted gave way to the sensation of having arrived. The weight of 82 years, the weariness in my bones, the shortness of breath, all of it was left behind, down there, in that sun-drenched armchair. It was like taking off a heavy, wet coat after a long walk in the rain, and for the first time, feeling the warmth of the fire on your skin. I was light, completely and perfectly light. For an instant, which could have been a second or 1,000 years, the only thing that existed was silence. A silence like I had never known on Earth. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was something more. It was a full, absolute silence. A silence that had substance. A silence that calmed every part of me that had ever been anxious or afraid. The ticking of the clock, the noise of the world, the constant hum of life. It was all gone. And in that stillness, I felt more myself than I had in my entire life. Then, the light. Ah, the light. In the room, it was white, blinding. But here it was different. It didn't come from a source, from a window or the sun. It was the source. It was an ocean of warm, golden light that embraced me from all sides. And it wasn't just light for the eyes. It was a light that could be felt. A light that seemed to know me. Every particle of it seemed to whisper a single word. Welcome. There was no judgment in that light, only an acceptance so profound it was almost overwhelming. And it was from the light that the sound began. Slowly. First as a vibration, a deep, distant hum, like a cello playing a single, endless note. But then, other notes joined it. Harmonies the human mind could not conceive. It wasn't a song with words, no. It was the very essence of music. The sound of many waters, as the scriptures say, but waters that sang in perfect harmony. It was a sound that didn't enter through the ears, but that resonated in my very soul, as if I myself were an instrument in that divine orchestra. I no longer had a body, but I could perceive. I could see without eyes, hear without ears, feel without skin. And I realized I was moving again, but not like before. I wasn't being pulled, I was being drawn, like a piece of iron in the presence of the most powerful of magnets. The force was irresistible, but it was gentle. It was a call home. I floated in that ocean of light and sound, immersed in a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace the world cannot give. And for a moment, I thought that was heaven. Just that light, that music, that peace, forever. But then, the melody began to intensify. The light seemed to concentrate, becoming even brighter, purer, at a point in front of me. And it was in that moment, in the heart of that living light, that I had the most profound of certainties. That love, that music, they were not a place. They were a presence. And I knew, with a clarity that shook my new existence, that I was not, and never had been, alone. The presence. There is no other word to describe it. As I was drawn into the heart of that light, the music transformed. It ceased to be an orchestra and became a voice, but a voice that made no sound. A voice that spoke directly into my essence, into the deepest part of my being. And what it said was my name. Just that. But it said my name as it was meant to be. The name God whispered at creation when he thought of me. And upon hearing that name, I remembered who I was. I did not see a face with eyes and a mouth, not as we understand it. I saw, or rather I felt, a gaze. A gaze that saw me completely. Not just the 82-year-old man, but the boy who ran barefoot on the grass. The young man who fell in love. the man who made terrible mistakes in silence, the father who tried his best. Everything. Every moment of my existence was laid out before me, not as a film, but as a single, present, now. And the fear I expected to feel, the fear of judgment, of shame, it did not come. In its place came a wave of love so powerful, so unconditional, that it undid every knot of regret I carried. It was a love that did not ignore my failings, but loved them anyway. I saw every harsh word I had said, every selfish act, and I felt the pain I had caused. But in the same instant, I was flooded with a forgiveness that was like a waterfall of clean water, washing away the dirt of a lifetime. Every sin, every stain, was no longer an accusation, but a wound that love was, in that very moment, kissing until it healed. The communication was a flow, a pouring out of pure knowledge. I did not need to ask. The questions I didn't even know I had were answered. Why the suffering? Why the loss? And the answer came, not in words, but in understanding. I saw the tapestry of my life, and I saw how every dark thread, every painful knot, was necessary to create a pattern that I, from my side of the loom, could never have seen. Everything had a purpose. Everything. Every tear was being redeemed. I wanted to stay. Oh my God, how I wanted to stay. To remain in that ocean of love forever was the only thing that made sense. I belonged there. It was my true home. There was nothing more to desire. I tried to move closer, to merge completely with that light. And then, with a tenderness that broke my newly healed heart, came the message. Not in words, in a feeling. Not yet, my son. Your work is not finished. I didn't want to hear it. I fought against it with all my will. Go back? Go back to the broken body, to the world of muffled sounds and passing time. Go back to the absence of that presence. It was the most painful thought I could conceive. But the call to stay was not an order. It was an invitation of love. And the call to return was also one. I understood, without being told, that there was a reason. There was one last service to be rendered. Maybe it was just to tell anyone who would listen that all of this is real, that love is waiting for all of us. With immense sadness, but a peaceful acceptance, I felt the pull change direction. The force that drew me to the center of the light now gently pushed me away. I didn't want to go. Every fiber of my being screamed to stay, but the love of that presence gave me the strength to obey. And as I began my journey back, the majestic music started to fade, and another sound, a rhythmic and desperate sound, began to take its place. A familiar sound, the sound of a heart struggling to beat. The return. It's the only part that still hurts. To be torn from that place, from that presence, is like being thrown from a warm embrace into the middle of an ice storm. The sound of the beating heart, once distant, was now thunder in my ears. A desperate thunder. And I felt a violent pull, an invisible anchor dragging me down, away from the light, away from the peace. It was a crushing weight. Every part of my being that had been light and free began to grow dense, heavy, physical. I felt the cold first, a cold that came from within, as if my blood were turning to lead. And then, the pain. The pressure in my chest returned, no longer as a presence, but as a fiery spear piercing me. And suddenly, a jolt, an impact, and the light was gone. I opened my eyes, but they did not obey immediately. The first thing I noticed was the sound, an electronic beep, annoying and constant, to my right. Then, the smell, a clean chemical smell, the smell of a hospital, and the touch, the rough texture of a sheet against my skin, the plastic of a tube in my nose. The air no longer came easily. Each breath was a chore, a conscious effort to fill lungs that seemed small and weak. I tried to move my hand and felt the weight of an arm, the weight of my own arm. I had forgotten what it was to have weight. It took an eternity to lift my hand and look at it. It was my hand, yes, wrinkled with bulging veins. But it looked like a stranger's hand, a shell, a tool that I used, but that was not me. My daughter was beside the bed, sleeping in a chair, her face marked with worry. Looking at her was the first thing that anchored me back to reality. But the joy of seeing her was mixed with a longing so deep, a pain for the home I had just left, that tears began to roll down my face without any effort on my part. They were hot and salty, physical. And that is the change. That is what I need you to understand. The fear of death, it's gone, completely. It has been replaced by a serene certainty. I don't believe there is something after. I know. I have been there. Death is not an end. It is an awakening. It is taking off the heavy coat and finally arriving home. And life, life. It has become incredibly precious. Not for fear of losing it, but for understanding its purpose. You who are listening to me, please understand. Every second here is a gift to learn a single lesson, to love. Everything else, the worries about money, the petty grudges, the pride that stops you from asking for forgiveness, it's all dust, particles dancing in the sunlight, which will soon disappear. I have seen what matters. I have seen what remains. Do not hold grudges. It is not worth it. The wound you cause in others, you carry in your own soul, and the love you give is the only treasure you take with you. Forgive. Forgive quickly. Love without measure. Tell people you love them. Do not wait. Time is shorter than we imagine, but eternity is more glorious than we can dream. Since that day, I feel as if I live in two places at once. I am here, in this world of colors and shadows, but a part of me is still there, in that ocean of golden light, listening to that music. And I know, with a peace that nothing can shake, that soon my work here will truly be finished, and I will go back home. And that presence, that love which is more real than anything we can touch, will be waiting for me. It will be waiting for all of us. Just waiting.